Hey, gun people. I wanted to follow up on that other gun show. A couple people put some links in here. This guy explains kind of what happened. Um, hey, I give the guy props. He loaded a video of him shooting himself, and he explained it, and he took responsibility. So I'm okay with this guy. I kind of want to talk a little bit about. He explains what happened, but from outside, people are going to see it differently and say things, and you can make it into this guy's a dummy or it's all his fault and it would never happen to you. But um, I've seen some really good shooters that I respect and I would take in tactical situations, and they make mistakes. So just because somebody does something stupid doesn't mean that, everything else is bad. I don't know anything about this guy other than the video of him shooting himself in this video. So some people said he's been around for a while, good guy, this and that. I know nothing about him. Please don't come here and be hating on me because I'm cracking on him, or hating on me because you hate him and I said something good about him. So I just want to go over his explanation on that shooting, and he shows the shooting in here.
Howdy folks, Texas Grebner here, Texas Grebner Outdoors. I'm not making this video for sympathy, and I'm not making it to be ridiculed.
Well, if you put something on the internet, you're going to be ridiculed. So you can say you don't want it, but there's always going to be people out there doing it. But I mean, I think the guy did a good thing by putting it out there and showing it.
I experienced a negligent discharge of...
Okay, negligent discharge. For years we called them ADs. Then the new and improved is ND, and if you call it AD, the guys that have brought up and been only heard it as ND will say ND is negligent discharge. AD is an accidental discharge. For years it was called an AD, wasn't that big of a deal. Somebody decided somewhere to go, it's not an accident, it's negligent. It's kind of like you can't have a car accident anymore. It's got to be a negligent accident in a car. Nobody can make a mistake. Nobody can, just have an error. I mean, shit happens. But if you call it an AD, you're going to have the little word Nazis that come here. There's no such thing as an AD. So anyway, I want to cover that because I get that a lot when I call it AD.
My Kimber Pro Carry 2 1911 45 ACP. As you see, I'm wearing a hospital bracelet. The footage that I'm about to show you is what actually happened. I just fucking shot myself.
Okay. And again, he shows it in slow motion here. So the holster he's about to show, I think, is called, what is it, a Spectra? Or I think I might have one. It's got a button on the outside that you push. It's one of those retention holsters, so somebody doesn't come and grab your gun. There's different styles. There's some with a push behind the trigger. There's some with a push on a holster. There's some that you slide your thumb on the inside. Safariland makes one. The one that I carry on my leg, the black one, it has the thumb release on the inside and a bell cover. So a lot of different retentions. I'm not a big retention holster guy. One, I think in an oh shit moment, it's a slowdown. Cops in uniform always have retention holsters because we don't always go to our gun, and we're involved in fights, and sometimes we get in the middle of a fight and we're outnumbered, and you don't want somebody grabbing your gun. So cops in uniform almost always have retention holders. Detectives, guys in plain clothes, most of them don't have retention. I mean, it may be a 50-50. I would say it's probably more of a 60-40. 60 don't have it, or 70% don't have it, and 30 do. But I don't want to get in an argue over percentages, but I rarely carried a secondary security holster that you had to do something else other than pull. I like being able to, when I grab my gun, I pull it. And if I let somebody get close enough to grab my gun, then, the fight's on. So he's got his finger there, and he doesn't really blame the holster. And I have this holster. I don't know what gun it fits, but I know I have one for some gun that I have. And I've never had an AD, and I know the buttons on the outside, and I've pushed it. But the way he explains it, it's possible. Doesn't make sure it's right or whatever, but let's listen to his explanation. So gun comes out, he uses the finger, and he's saying right here his finger rolled into the trigger housing, and that's what caused it to fire. Because he took his 1911 off safe. Remember, Glocks have a trigger safety. You got to squeeze the trigger. It's more of a deliberate. 1911s have a very single action, very soft trigger. It's known for very slight triggers and a good trigger reset, so you can get quicker double taps. 1911s have a thumb safety that most people take off when they draw their gun. He's saying he took it off because he was used to another holder. Most people who have 1911s practice, as soon as you draw, you click the safety off.
Happened. Earlier in the day, I had been practicing with my 511 thumb drive holster. The 511 thumb drive has a thumb-driven retention mechanism. What I was attempting to do was draw and fire.
Okay, his hand behind his head, they teach that a lot in up-close shooting so you don't shoot your hand. I'm not sure that's a tactical move, but for range training, to make sure that new shooters, when you're drawing and shooting, they teach put your hand behind your head. That way you know your hand is not going to come in front of the gun. Another way that comes into play is when you draw, we used to teach you push a target. You would actually push the target with this hand and then draw and shoot while you're pushing and moving back. Some guys would push down, not a good move. You want to push up when you're shooting and drawing. But that's why the hand goes behind his head.
From defensive retention. However, I had done this multiple times with my 511 thumb drive earlier that day with my Glock.
When he says I've done it multiple times, we call that muscle memory. When you develop, I've always said it's not good to be switching. I see guys, and I used to do it as a cop, and I still do it. I carry it in different areas. Ideally, you want to carry the gun one place, every place, all time, same holster, same gun. You're not switching. Nowadays, people got 5 different holsters, 5 different ways to carry, 5 different releases, 5 safety holsters, no safety holsters, single stage retention, double stage retention, triple threat retention. They got all these crazy things on these holsters, and they're always changing around. Center of the back, you know, in the belt, out of the belt, on the hip, on the leg, on the ankle, shoulder holster. I mean, there's just so many ways to carry, and the more you switch, the less you reinforce one good solid muscle memory. Now, the good thing by doing all those ways is you learn different ways and you don't get set in your ways, and you can adjust quickly if wherever you're carrying. But that does create a little bit of lag time. Somebody that only carries in one place and draws the same gun from the same place every time will have less lag time than a guy who changes positions, because there's that millisecond of where am I carrying it today? What gun do I have? Do I have a safety that I have to take off, or I don't have a safety? Is it double action or single action? Is there a bullet in the barrel, or do I have to rack the round in? So the more things you add when you draw, the more lag time you create. And when an oh shit situation happens and your mind goes into hyperdrive and you're thinking of all these things about survival, and you go into little brain and your little lizard brain kicks in, you're just thinking survival, reaction, muscle memory. The guy who only carries it one place, same place every time, will usually be quicker. Not always, but usually and normally.
The 511 thumb drive is in the actual same position as the safety on my Kimber. As in, when I went to draw my pistol, I pushed down and took off the...
Now, I think he would have done that anyway. I'm not necessarily sure, unless he practices not taking off his safety when he draws. Most people train, you take your safety off your 1911 draw. That is part of the drawing procedure. When you draw, the safety comes off. If you wouldn't be needing your gun, you wouldn't be drawing it. There's no reason to have a damn safety on, which is why I don't like having it in the first damn place, because you got to remember taking it off. But I digress. We'll stay with this.
The safety. Then I pulled up. The gun did not release because I had not engaged the mechanism on the index mechanism. And so as I pulled up, I hit that, my finger curled into the trigger guard, and I ripped around through my leg. This is not something that I blame on the holster. I blame it purely on me.
And I agree with that. I think he's taken it pretty smart. I mean, there's a lot of people that will blame the holster and say, well, you shouldn't use that holster. That's a bad holster. And there'll be people that won't buy that holster, and that holster is just bad. And if it can do that with you, it'll do it with someone else, and the holster's no good. And that's what they used to do with Glocks when they first came out, because a couple people had some ADs, and all of a sudden, bam, Glock's no good. It goes off by itself. People are shooting themselves all the time. It's a bad gun. It's not a bad gun. It's always the person.
However, I share it with you because gun safety is everybody's business.
We get into safety.
The Full Metal Jacket 45 entered my body here and traveled down to my knee, and
it's a good thing he probably wasn't using a good, and that's the con, if there is a con, from shooting the same ammo you carry. If he was carrying a good Hydroshock, flare, whatever, RIP round, Ranger, Winchester Ranger, I like those. That's the old Black Talon. It's those rounds tend to mushroom and flare and cut. I'm not sure it would have just went a straight path and went down. I'm assuming it hit his bone, just followed the bone and went straight out, but you don't see a large exit wound.
Exited. I was very lucky that I was not more seriously hurt than this. After the shot went off, my training took over.
This is where he kind of loses me. His training took over and he called his parents.
I called my parents to let them know what had happened.
Rick, why are you picking a look? I get it. He's probably calling, if he's out on a range by himself and they're the only ones that know where he's at, and in case the ambulance can't get to him or he passes out, he wanted someone else to know. So I get that. I would think calling 911 first, because if you call 911, it tracks the call, it tracks your number, and worst case scenario, you pass out. They can triangulate your cell phone, or know where you're at if you're calling from a hard line, because it gives your address. But I'm not cracking on a guy too much for calling his parents.
I called 911. I dressed my wound and had the bleeding stopped before the paramedics actually arrived at the gun range. The reason that I share this is because negligent discharges happen.
That's very true. And I use the analogy that somebody that never flies has a very low chance of getting hurt in a plane crash. Very low. And somebody that's never ever owned a gun, been around a gun, goes to a gun range, shoots a gun, or goes hunting, has a lower chance of getting shot unless they live in a gun-free zone or a high liberal, high diversity is our strength area. Then their odds of getting shot is much higher than people who own guns. But normally, if you work around guns, you carry guns, cops have a lot of accidental discharges. It doesn't get out, they don't tell you, but they probably have more than any other group of people on the planet, because they handle guns all the time. We're taking them in and out of vehicles, we're taking them off people, we're loading them, we're unloading them, we're clearing them, we're changing ammo, we go to the range a lot, we have extra ammo, we're trying out new guns. The more you handle guns, the greater the chance that it's going to happen. The more you drive, the more likely you are to get in an accident. If you never drive and you never get in a car, probably your odds of getting in a car accident is less. It's just the numbers.
And I don't want them to happen to anybody else. I consider myself to be a very safe and responsible gun owner. And I have done that draw stroke thousands of times with no problem. Things just tend to happen.
Now here's where a lot of people want to argue with this guy. Things don't happen. If you were paying attention, if you were doing something good, look, I'm telling you, I've been around some really good expert shooters who have handled guns long times, and shit happens. It just happens. And I know everybody's going to say it shouldn't and it never and you won't, but look, every discharge that happens and ends up somebody getting shot by accident or negligent, whatever you want to call it, nobody plans it. Nobody got up that morning and go, gee, I'm going to go do this. It happens. So can you minimize it? Yeah, you can try to do things, but, it's like getting in a car. If you drive safely and if you're aware of your circumstances, you'll never get in an accident. If you get in an accident, it's your fault. Well, that's just freaking stupid. Don't be an idiot.
I just hope that they never happen to me again, and I hope that they never happen to you. As always, God bless all my sportsmen.
Okay, so he sounds like a pretty good guy. I got no problem with his explanation. I think it's pretty cool that he put it out there. Most people wouldn't. He explained it, I think, reasonably. Everyone will have their own opinion on whether or not it was really justified or it was, a dumb move on his part. I don't necessarily think it's a dumb move. I think shit happens. He was out there training. He's experienced it. Now he's got some experience getting shot. He learned from it. He shared it with other people. I'm okay with it. I posted the other video just kind of raw seeing it because somebody had sent it to me, and I went, okay, I see his finger on it, and that can happen when you draw your gun. If you get your finger on too quick or you start trying to get too fast. But anyway, everybody can have their own opinion. We'll end that there.